Hello everyone, I'm Jim Longworth and welcome to another edition of Triad Today, coming to you once again from the beautiful Cedar Botanical Garden in Kernersville. We'll tell you more about them later on, and later on is when the roundtable shows up. We'll get into all sorts of controversial issues, so stay tuned for that. Some great guests, important issues coming up throughout the program, so I want you to be with us the entire time. But where we want to start is introducing you to somebody who's kind of new to the community, and we'll tell you why in just a second. But right now, on my right, Bryn Eyerman is a physician assistant with Northern Gastroenterology. He's part of the Northern Regional Hospital family. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
And folks from the Raleigh-Durham area, but you lived up in Northern Virginia for a while, and but we're glad to have you here. Now, where did you, did you tell me before you were born up in Northern Virginia? Did you go to high school and college? Tell me about that.
I was actually born in Raleigh, but my dad's job moved us up there, so I grew up in Northern Virginia.
Right.
And then PA school actually brought me back to North Carolina, so I went to East Carolina, out in Greenville.
Now, how did you get to how long have you been in the healthcare field?
So I graduated in 2019, so I've been a provider on my own for 3 years now. So
that's great. Having young talent come up to look after us, and I just think that's super that you are working in this area. Now, I want to get to something that it just happens to be sort of a colorectal awareness month, and since that's the case, and I have you here, let me ask you to bring me up to speed. How prevalent is colorectal cancer these days?
So it's one of the most common cancers that we see in the United States, and it's actually the second leading cause of cancer-related deaths in the United States. It's very prevalent.
Well, now, at what age? You know, people talk about, well, you need to get a colonoscopy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is there a difference for men and women, black and white, different ethnicities, certain age? I mean, when do you know you should be going for a colonoscopy?
So the guidelines actually recently changed in the last number of years, and they were recommending that everyone start screenings at 45, unless you're someone who has risk factors where we would consider doing it earlier.
Now, now I mentioned you were with a Northern Gastroenterology practice. Now that's in Mount Airy.
Yes.
And so you're not really far from the hospital, right?
Correct.
So where would colonoscopies be done would it be done in your office, or would they go to the hospital, or what?
So it's done through the outpatient surgical center attached to the hospital.
Right. Why I know this is going to sound like a stupid question, but why are these screenings so important? Why is it, you talked about how prevalent colorectal cancer is. Why is it so important? What message are you trying to get across to people?
So there's two things. One of them is it allows us to detect colorectal cancers earlier, and so patients need less treatment and their outcomes are better. But the other thing is colorectal cancer is actually quite preventable through doing these screenings. So there's studies that suggest that the incidence or the number of cases of colorectal cancer would be decreased by 50 to almost 90%.
Wow.
And the mortality associated by 60% or more.
Yeah, and yet, Bryn, you know, there are people who are reticent to have a colonoscopy, maybe even to take the at-home test or whatever. I mean, what do you say to somebody who says, look, I really don't want to know? What do you say?
Well, you know, I understand that there are people that don't want to know because it's scary, but our job is to give patients all the information, you know, the risks and benefits of doing it, the risks and benefits of not, and help them make an educated decision for themselves. Of course, we encourage it,
right.
But at the end of the day, everyone has to make their own choice.
Yeah, and you're a great educator, so I'm sure you can persuade people to get these tests because they're very, very important. Up on screen, one thing I want to give a plug to is if you want to make an appointment at Northern Gastroenterology, you can call, and correct me if I'm wrong, 786-6277, I think is the main number. And for general information, go to choosenorthern.org. That's the hospital website. You can learn lots of great things there. Bryn, thanks again for choosing this area to help us, and I appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right. We'll be right back after this.